Mr. Speaker, I stand in this honorable House today to give support to the Appropriation Bill 2020-2022 presented on Tuesday, 26 April by the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, exactly 9 months after the people of St. Lucia voted the government of the United Workers' Party out of office. I want to commend the Prime Minister for a bill that is purely about putting the people first, a bill that is about empowering our people and transforming our economy. I want to once again, Mr. Speaker, to sincerely thank the people of Dennery South for placing the trust and confidence in me. To my wife, Mr. Speaker, and my 2 daughters, Vicky and Crystal, I want to say a big thank you to them for the encouragement and support that they have been given to me. Mr. Speaker, before I delve into the business of my ministry, I would like to make mention of 2 matters of concern in my constituency. The first one is a very sad one, and it is about a sudden death of Roger Ketchup Joseph, a young, talented, jovial, energetic, outgoing, and cheerful individual who passed last week, Mr. Speaker. He was actually a member of my youth group. He was in my office just a few weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, discussing matters in terms of how I can work with him in terms of getting him into some business venture that is important for his future. Mr. Speaker, I want to express, as the parliamentary rep for Dennery South, my sincere condolences to his family, especially his father Roger and his parents, as well as friends and other members of the Dennery community. For the first time, Mr. Speaker, we saw a female individual in the name of Donna Regis leaving the island yesterday to participate for the first time in the Canadian Farm Program. I do wish her the best, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister mentioned 2 days ago, the Ministry of Agriculture is probably one of the most important ministries, especially with regards to feeding the nation. And Mr. Speaker, with the whole thrust of food security, food insecurity, Mr. Speaker, it has even become more important, and this ministry continues to be one, if not the most important ministry at this time to help St. Lucia in terms of addressing its food security issues. The government of St. Lucia, through the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Food Security and Rural Development, has commissioned a food security strategy and action plan to address the causes and effects of food insecurity in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker, particularly given the recent spike in food prices, including agricultural produce, livestock, and fish products. Je voulais dire ça en créole pour toutes ces femmes, pour faire savoir que le ministre agricole, c'est un ministre qui est très important pour le pays Saint-Lucie. Il est venu pour produire manger. Et le ministre agricole a une importance et valeur manger. Et puis, l'importance là, c'est femmes ni est venu pour production manger Saint-Lucie. Et nous mettons ensemble en stratégie et bien un plan pour nous travailler avec toutes ces femmes, toutes ces gens qui agricoles, qu'on ces pêcheurs, qu'on ces agro-processors là, ces femmes qui ont les gyms là, pour nous mettre un plan ensemble, pour nous garder qui manière nous résoudre les problèmes là qui affectent nous et qui continuent à affecter nous en temps pour venir. Là, il vient pour production manger cette ici. The high cost of food, including agricultural produce, has been a major concern, especially for consumers who purchase from supermarkets and other outlets. The situation was further exacerbated by the event of COVID-19 pandemic, which caused breakdowns in the supply chain for many goods, resulting in unsatisfied demand and shortages. St. Lucia, like other countries in the region, must grapple with the possibility of being squeezed out of global markets because of increasing demand for food products by larger and more influential countries. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, St. Lucia continues to record high food import bills, which have averaged in excess of $300 million between 2016 and 2019, except for 2020, during which imports of agricultural produce declined by 74% to $95.8 million. Je voulais crier à ces gens dans cette liste, mais je voulais permission speaker pour dire ça pas toi. Nous allons continuer en chaque manger that nous allons servir cette liste, car tout le monde sorti from l'autre pays. Et puis en l'année 2016 pour 2019, nous importons à peu près 300 millions de dollars valeur à manger. Mais en l'année 2020, nous y descendons pour 95.8 millions de dollars. Donc, ça c'est un chai l'argent nous avons payé pour mener manger en tout. Et nous avons créé il allait pour nous venir ensemble pour produire un chai ensemble chez manger ça nous avons produit cette ici. Et moi ça nous ces femmes ça fait depuis nous ainsi pour nous ça fait. Et ça c'est une situation ministre agricole qui prend pour garder qui manière nous ça résoudre situation ça là. Mr. Speaker, this was as a result of reduced demand by the hotels and supermarkets due to the effect of COVID-19. Consequently, food security issues must be prioritized and addressed urgently if we are to protect and meet the needs of the populace. Mr. Speaker, it is imperative that we encourage our food producers to grow more than we can consume, all with a view to exporting, storing, and processing surplus yields. This will make a unique opportunity, provide a unique opportunity, Mr. Speaker, for the St. Lucia Marketing Board to facilitate the export and sales of such food products. Je voulais crier à ce femme pêcheur, tout le monde qui est involvé en secteur agricole là, la vision c'est pour nous encourager pour produire plus passer nous qu'à servir ici. Because là où produit plus passer ça nous qu'à servir ici, nous avons assez manger pour nous manger ici, nous pas une opportunité pour nous mener un chai manger en tout qu'on nous a fait avant, mais nous avons aussi ni manger pour nous ça store, pour nous ça process et pour nous ça exporter dehors. Et que là nous fait ça, c'est pêcheurs, tout le monde qui est en secteur agricole là, quand ça fait plus l'argent. Et que nous gagnons ça, nous créons sustainable agriculture. Côté ces femmes qui continuent à faire l'argent et return industry. Mr. Speaker, this strategy and action plan seeks to contribute towards the achievement of food and nutrition security by outlining various measures which will assist in reducing the cost of producing crops, livestock, and fish products within the agricultural sector, thereby benefiting all stakeholders. A variety of new concerns in food security and nutrition will need to be addressed in the future. And these include 1. Meeting the food and nutritional needs of the population. Nous devons make sure that nous ça produit assez manger that nous besoin pour population. Secondly, increasing sustainable agricultural production and productivity. Nous devons un agricole secteur, un secteur agricole côté qui a encouragé tout le monde à être en secteur. Nous avons where that ces farmers continuent à produire, et que là, ils continuent à produire, ils peuvent faire l'argent. Enhancing resilience to climate change. Nous attendons about climate change, côté nous avons l'année, nous avons la pluie, l'année, nous avons un soleil. Now, là, on parle about soleil, ou là, même, là, côté où as a farmer qui joue une glow pour produire quantité manger et quantité manger nous avons besoin pour nous nourrir. So enhancing resilience to climate change is very important, Mr. Speaker, and I am very happy to have witnessed, the heavy rains coming in the last day or two, Mr. Speaker. I am certainly sure our farmers are very happy of this, and they will surely take advantage of this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, we in terms of the strategies to address food security, I have a list of many, but I want to just focus on a few, Mr. Speaker. And one of them, Mr. Speaker, is increasing water storage capacity and water management on farms. There has been a very heavy dependence on rain-fed agriculture, Mr. Speaker. And that is why in the dry season, there is what we call low production of certain commodities when compared to the rainy season, when you have gluts in a number of agricultural produce, due to the high rainfall quantities during this time of year. Maximum crop yield through more efficient water use. Reducing the cost of agrochemicals through the utilization of organic methods, including composting. Reduce dependency on labor-intensive production methods through mechanization, and which includes tillers and small implements. Mr. Speaker, I have always been concerned with the fact that a lot of our farmers still adopt the traditional methods of farming. You still see a lot of the crowbar, you still see a lot of the pickaxe, the hoe. But Mr. Speaker, it is time for us to mechanize the sector. And that is one way our young people will be attracted to the sector. It is not going to be very attractive to our young persons if they continue to see the pickaxe, the hoe, the cutlass. But Mr. Speaker, we need to bring new forms of mechanization in the sector. And this is why in this new financial year, Mr. Speaker, a sum of $450,000 was approved for purchase or procurement of new equipment that would help the farmer reduce on the high labor cost in terms of his production, but to help him produce more for spending less time, less financial resources, but the end result is to ensure that he makes more money at the end. We need to promote or assess the potential of agricultural lands to determine its optimal use, Mr. Speaker. We know we have hundreds and hundreds of abandoned lands that was as a result of many people living in the banana industry, Mr. Speaker. Our young people are calling for access to land, Mr. Speaker, to get into agriculture. We need to assess the potential of those agricultural lands, Mr. Speaker, and maybe place it into what we call a land bank, so young people can access the land bank, and so that lands will be ideal lands will be available for them to practice agriculture. Expand local production of aquaculture products, shrimp and tilapia. Mr. Speaker, we know the Taiwanese program has engaged a number of farmers. Nous avons chaque farmer nous savent qui est engagé en production aquaculture. Ça c'est ça que tilapia et shrimps. Mais nous voulons pli en ces farmers, nous cette ici pli en ces moun ça là, continuer pour produire en chaque ces pression ça là. Because there is a potential pour pour hotel là et demand pour ça en Saint-Lucie. So I'm encouraging a lot of those aquaculture farmers to expand their aquaculture ponds so that they can produce more in terms of fish products in St. Lucia. Maintain the fish aggregating device, what you call the FADs, our fishermen have seen the value and importance of the fads, Mr. Speaker. And when we met the fishers in Soufrière, Dennery, Micoud, Vieux-Fort, Mr. Speaker, there has always been a cry for fads. And I just want to note, Mr. Speaker, my ministry will be in the next few weeks making available 3 fads, one for the fishers in Soufrière, one for the fishers in Vieux-Fort, and one, obviously, for the fishers in Dennery, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a number of short-term measures have also been identified in terms of addressing the food security issues. And Mr. Speaker, I know a lot of the other persons with fisher folks are making a request, but in the coming year we will see what can be done to assist Mr. Honorable Member for Grosile and Canaries and Micoud North, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are a number of other short-term, medium-term measures that we have already highlighted to address the food security issues. And one that is of very, very significance to us is the role of the marketing board, Mr. Speaker. In spite of all what I've just said there, Mr. Speaker, it is one thing to ask our farmers to produce and to produce more than we need, but we must ensure that we have an entity available to be able to actually buy from those farmers and to ensure that the farmers get what they duly deserve. So the St. Lucia Marketing Board, Mr. Speaker, which was established to provide the institutional support and framework for the production and marketing of non-banana produce, Mr. Speaker. However, over the years, many attempts have been made to operate the St. Lucia Marketing Board with limited resources, aging physical plant, inadequate human resources, and limited financial assistance from central government. In addition, Mr. Speaker, competition from private sector businesses who have made significant inroads in the sales in the hospitality and commercial sectors has made it extremely difficult for St. Lucia Marketing Board to operate in its current form whilst trying to fulfill its original mandate. The problems facing the St. Lucia Marketing Board have worsened over the years, and in pursuance of its mandate, the organization, with assistance from the government, must embark on a number of initiatives aimed at enhancing efficiency and improving its competitiveness in a dynamic and changing trading environment. Mr. Speaker, the St. Lucia Marketing Board must position itself to meet the global challenges by creating an enabling environment and providing the necessary services that will enhance its business capabilities. Given the current financial crunch, Mr. Speaker, facing the St. Lucia Marketing Board, there is an urgent need for an injection of capital by way of either subvention or a loan supported by the government. 2, Mr. Speaker, to allow a cash injection for support to the Marketing Board for a guaranteed loan. Mr. Speaker, it is also necessary for us to view the enactment of government policy, Mr. Speaker, to ensure all institutions such as the hospitals, the schools, the prisons actually get the local produce to be purchased from the St. Lucia Marketing Board. And in closing in terms of the Marketing Board, Mr. Speaker, is an opportunity to grant sole importer status on a number of products that we import in St. Lucia to the Marketing Board to ensure its sustainability. Marketing Board là, c'est une entité qui était trouvée quoi établie en 1977. Et ça, c'était une entité qui était placée expressement by Pharma Saint-Lucie pour vendre toutes ces bagailles-là qu'ils ont produit. Mais en temps passé, nous Saint Lucia Marketing Board là, car point en descendant, because il passe hen am koy kam supporter ces femmes qu'on était pour. Et que yon nan se bagay la cause ça, c'est la nan chay compétition. La nan chay l'autre place qu'on c'est hôtels là, Marcy, c'est petits restaurants là qui a acheté produits from Marcy, from ces femmes directement et qui a fait difficile pour marketing board là continuer travail manière supposée. Mais nous avons un temps pour venir, nous avons discuté ça et puis cabinet là, le gouvernement qui a eu support qui est nécessaire pour marketing board là, Mr. Speaker. One other very, very important measure in terms of addressing our food security issues, Mr. Speaker, is the 7 Crops Program, which its first phase commenced in May 2019, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we saw 7 crops that were specifically targeted where farmers were increasing the production of those crops, all in an effort to reduce our import of those 7 crops. The new phase of this program, Mr. Speaker, funded by the government of Taiwan, commenced in March this year, and it is a 5-year period, Mr. Speaker, costing $3.3 million US dollars, almost 10 million EC dollars, Mr. Speaker, to assist our farmers, to assist the sector in helping us meet our food security needs. Mr. Speaker, I want to take this time to thank the government and people of Taiwan for making these funds available to my ministry and the government to support our farmers in this time when they need it most. Mr. Speaker, implementation of a school feeding project with the assistance of the government of Mexico and the Food and Agriculture Organization to improve nutrition in schools through the restructuring and expansion of the school feeding program is on its way, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we will encourage youth involvement in agriculture, fish and fisheries to ensure sustainability and continuity. This will be done through a focus on employing and encouraging mechanization, as I mentioned earlier, and reduce labor-intensive methodologies for production, especially as it relates to non-traditional crops. Mr. Speaker, at this time, I move to the banana industry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the banana industry has been an industry that has had a significant impact on the social and economic development of St. Lucia. It has provided opportunities and employment for thousands of our rural people, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, when we look at the legacy issues surrounding the banana industry, I wish to state the following, Mr. Speaker. Our banana outputs over the last 2 to 3 years have plummeted to an all-time low. I will repeat. Mr. Speaker, our banana outputs over the last 2 to 3 years have plummeted to an all-time low. It recorded a decline of 45.4% to about 3.2 tons in 2021.
Say that again.
It recorded a decline of 45.4% to about 3.2 tons in 2021, Mr. Speaker. We were not there yet. We came in July of 2021. And this is according to the Economic and Social Review of 2021. Mr. Speaker, the passage of Hurricane Elsa in July 2021 resulted in damages of approximately 87% of the banana crop. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, the industry then faced several challenges thereafter, including 1, lack of supply in terms of production inputs and packaging materials, market inefficiencies, loss of access to the UK market, loss of access to the UK market, Mr. Speaker, lack of financial resources to rehabilitate banana fields,
the demise of Windfresh.
Mobile Disakoyol, Mr. Speaker, with your permission. Industry figure experience descendant a decline, ça c'est commencé à descendre en 2021. L'industrie descend par 45%. Là, il vient pour production figue. En 2021, nous only voyons 4500 tonnes figues l'Angleterre. Gouvernement, les bas partis pour côté en power, ça bien. Nous venons nous en industrie côté latini, nous pas de voir figue pour l'Angleterre. Nous tenons en industrie côté supply et production pour matériaux partis invalides. Nous sommes en situation côté NFT ont appartenu à assez l'argent pour bailler ces pharmacies pour faire ça pour faire Mr. Speaker. Nous sommes en situation côté Windfresh qui est responsable pour production figue pour toute pharmacie ici trouver fermé en juillet 2021. Mr. Speaker, the Windfresh had gone into administration and therefore ceased to exist from July 2019, and the NFTO was ill-equipped to carry out the functions of Windfresh in an efficient and effective manner.
Who was the representative on Windfresh?
Mr. Honorable, I can't remember his name, but it's my predecessor. Mr. Speaker, as a consequence, banana quality and quality suffered. The industry collapsed, and as a result, St. Lucia was denied a 2022 banana contract by Sainsbury. Mr. Speaker, in real terms, we lost 10 to 12,000 boxes of sales revenue for the year. Mr. Speaker, upon assuming office, our government, a St. Lucia Labour Party government who cares, Mr. Speaker, and seeks to put the people first, immediately set out to deal with the issues in order to restore farmer confidence and encourage farmers to replant and cultivate bananas, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have not mentioned sending any bananas to France, Mr. Speaker, in my deliberations. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to securing the livelihoods of our farmers. Mr. Speaker, our Labour Party-led government has taken several critical interventions to revitalize and restructure the industry. Mr. Speaker, upon assuming office, we immediately reached out to our banana partners in the UK. The Honourable Emma Hippolyte, the Minister for Commerce, and I led a delegation comprising Government of St. Lucia officials, national fair trade representatives, and private sector experts, the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, 2 members of the Banana Task Force, 1 representative from the NFTO, and a representative from Export St. Lucia traveled to the United Kingdom on a trade mission from November 14, 2021 to November 21, 2021. Mr. Speaker, the primary purpose of the mission was to secure contracts, quotas, and markets for St. Lucia bananas and other agricultural products. Further, Mr. Speaker, the mission sought to continue building on the established relationship with UK stakeholders and reinstill confidence and provide assurances for delivery of quality fruits. Mr. Speaker, on December 3rd, 2021, Cabinet approved the formation of a subcommittee responsible for the banana industry to focus attention and report on the progress made towards building the industry. In addition, Mr. Speaker, on December 6, 2021, Cabinet again, Mr. Speaker, approved the establishment of a banana task force to guide the restructuring of the banana industry. Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to report that the chairman of the task force submitted his final report on April 2021. This report will be tabled in Cabinet for guidance and direction on the way forward. Cabinet provided, Mr. Speaker, the approval for the engagement of a consultant to review the operations of the NFTO. In addition to technical support, Mr. Speaker, the government provided much-needed financial support to the NFTO. On Tuesday, March 29, 2022, Mr. Speaker, the government of St. Lucia, through the Ministry of Agriculture, the National Economic Fund, St. Lucia Development Bank, and NFTO signed a memorandum of understanding on a loan agreement for the sum of $3.8 million that would go to the NFTO and to the farmers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this government, my government, Mr. Speaker, we have also taken bold steps to explore the potential of our regional banana market while we simultaneously focus on revitalizing the UK market. On March 21st, Mr. Speaker, to March 23rd, 2022, I led a small delegation that traveled to Antigua and Barbuda. We met with importers, Mr. Speaker. We also met with the Minister for Agriculture, the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Mr. Speaker, and currently our weekly order stands at 6,500 boxes per week heading to the region. We see the potential, Mr. Speaker, for an increase in our volumes within the region. Mr. Speaker, my focus is only in the region so far. I have not mentioned bananas going to Martinique nor France. Mr. Speaker, je voulais crier à ces femmes je voulais dire ces femmes là nous entrons en gouvernement, nous avons une industrie qui était presque collapse. Une industrie côté confidence pharma pas ça était pouillé. Mais gouvernement qui copain et savent valer industrie là en cette ici a fait un chai pour garder qui manière nous kay ressusciter industrie because nous savons nous y a chai moun qui dépend de l'industrie nous savons qui ça industrie means pour ces femmes et ça nous can faire as a gouvernement pour nous garder opportunité qui a existé en région pour nous savons magnifique nous aller. Nous savons actuellement l'année en 1000 boîtes qui ont quitté ici à Trinidad tous les semaines. Et qu'après budget là, les moyens de chance nous caillons monter là pour garder qui manière nous ça increase export of fig et puis l'autre produit aussi, Mr. Speaker, pour garder qui manière nous ça voir plus fig nous en région. Et Mr. Speaker, moi voulais crier sur ces femmes, moi savent chaque les nous meeting, moi savent on est un chai problème là il vient pour sel, validate avec l'autre bagaille ou besoin by industrie. Mais nous avons quoi en temps pour venir, monsieur Prime Ministre là, là il a joindre un petit l'argent côté il a ça moi si oui, il a buy pharmacie pour il besoin. Mr. Speaker, it is my intention to establish a network within the region that will facilitate strategic market, growth and distribution of our bananas. Very soon, Mr. Speaker, we will embark upon an intense sales, marketing and negotiating strategy within the region, geared towards increasing demand for our bananas in the region. Mr. Speaker, with these interventions to the industry challenges, we have been responsive to providing the resources, leadership, and attention required to put the banana industry back on a pathway to success. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure a lot of our farmers would know that on 31st March last month, Mr. Speaker, the 5-year program for the BPIP came to an end. Another program that was funded by the government and people of Taiwan. But Mr. Speaker, considering the importance of controlling the black Sikatoka disease, my government has established a small unit comprising of 6 persons who would be responsible for continuing to address the black Sikatoka problem, Mr. Speaker. So, je voulais crier à ce femme, même si le BPIP a fermé, mais nous avons un petit office qui est ouvert, qui peut continuer produire l'huile pour sa spray figure. Nous avons un extension officer qui peut continuer, ouais, quand continuer le travail là. Parce que nous avons calculé, si nous ne pas faire ces bagages là, quality, c'est un bagage qui est important. Et que nous voulons, ouais, femmes faire l'argent, nous voulons, ouais, femmes with industry, avec le gouvernement, ça là, le gouvernement Saint Lucia Labour Party, qui est led by Prime Minister Honorable Philippe J. Pierre, nous avons fait ça, nous payer, pour ensure that nous quitter, nous, ouais, industry, continue en direction qui est en succès. Mr. Speaker, I now move to a very important area in my ministry, the livestock sector, Mr. Speaker. The livestock sector has tremendous growth potential, which, if properly harnessed, can significantly contribute towards job creation and economic empowerment, food and nutrition security, and ultimately positively contributing to St. Lucia's GDP. St. Lucia is among the highest imports of meat and poultry in the OECS, and our current consumption of broiler meat is 3 times the world average, Mr. Speaker. Could you imagine that, Mr. Speaker? Local chicken, Mr. Speaker, and pork sales stood at over 27.6 million and pork 4.7 million respectively. We remain self-sufficient in table eggs and experience a rise in small subsistent layer production during the pandemic. Despite the strides, Mr. Speaker, in the poultry and pork sectors, productivity and efficiency continue to be hindered by the high cost of inputs, especially the poor quality and consistency of livestock feed, low investment and technology innovation in the sectors, and overall lack of standards. Increasing demands are being made for local beef, mutton, and chevron. Mr. Speaker, my ministry recognized the need to develop a clear roadmap with strategic interventions for the development of the livestock sector through the preparation of a master plan and infrastructure plan for the sector. The master plan, Mr. Speaker, focuses on development strategies for increasing livestock productivity, promoting expansion and development of priority livestock, Mr. Speaker, and the value chains, developing climate-resilient infrastructure, and capacity building of stakeholders in the subsector. Mr. Speaker, the previous government made a policy decision to relocate the Boseju Agricultural Station to Volet Mikud, Mr. Speaker. A further injection of funds is approved to complete the final phase of construction works at the facility in this new financial year, 2022-2023. Mr. Speaker, this will contribute immensely to the country's effort in diversifying the agricultural sector, reducing the food import bill, and assuring food security for its people. Mr. Speaker, after the operationalization of the new livestock station, the implementation of a national breeding program will commence in an effort to increasing livestock production and productivity to meet the needs of our consumers, as well as to contribute to the lowering of our food import bill. Je voulais crier à tous ces livestock farmers, Mr. Speaker, pour dire that moi savent qu'ils ont souffert en chai, because gouvernement United Workers Party a tiré Boseju agricultural station Boseju en V4 et nous amené en côté de Volet Mikou. Et moi si vous savez pour qui ça fait, because gouvernement United Workers Party a quoi that tiré qui était plus important parce que mon agricole. Et puis actuellement nous avons en chai animaux, tous ces animaux nous avons South Community College là en Denry North. Et nous avons quoi à l'année ça là, nous avons bâti et fini livestock facility en Mikou pour nous amener les animaux à vivre là pour ça commencer à bénéficier from activités ça là. Livestock farmers will have access to improved bloodlines of ruminants, swine and rabbits, not only through the purchase of better breeds, but also through techniques like artificial insemination and stud services. The station will also undertake research and training activities to build capacity and efficiency in the sector. Currently, the animals are housed, as I said, Mr. Speaker, at the South Community College in Grand Riviere Dennery. Mr. Speaker, I now move to the meat processing facility. Mr. Speaker, with all this being said, St. Lucia will require an appropriate infrastructure in order to accommodate these new initiatives within the livestock sector. Appropriate facilities for slaughtering, processing, packaging, and storage of meats are indispensable to driving the sector forward. The operation of the certified abattoirs, Mr. Speaker, is critical if we are to standardize our slaughter methods, provide safe and wholesome meats to consumers, implement traceability systems, facilitate cold storage and processing, and improve value chain development. In this vein, Mr. Speaker, a cost-benefit analysis was carried out by the Ministry to determine the best options for the operationalization of a meat processing facility here in St. Lucia. Mr. Speaker, my ministry established a committee to look at the facility and came up with 3 options. Option 1, Mr. Speaker, is that the meat processing facility remain at Beausejour Vieux-Fort. Option 2, Mr. Speaker, the meat processing facility to be relocated in Dennery North, with a new facility being constructed. Option 3, Mr. Speaker, the meat processing facility to be relocated to Dennery, but through a pre-fabricated building. The final results of the study indicated that option 1 means remaining at the current location had the highest benefit cost ratio and the greatest net present value. Although significant investments would be necessary to commission the MPF, the eventual benefits to be derived cannot be understated, including meeting our food security needs and decreasing our food import bills. Mr. Speaker, this takes me to the National Agricultural and Diagnostic Facility located in Union. Mr. Speaker, the opening of this new National Agricultural Diagnostic Facility and specifically the Veterinary Diagnostic Laboratory offer great avenues for undertaking surveillance activities for priority diseases of concern like the avian influenza and African swine fever, Mr. Speaker, 2 major threats in the region at present. Also, implementation of residue monitoring programs for veterinary pharmaceuticals in products like honey and meat. We recognize that imported chicken, Mr. Speaker, provides one of the best available and cheaper sources of protein. However, with rising cases of avian influenza in some of our major poultry export markets, particularly the UK, USA, and Canada, we have had to review and strengthen our importation requirements for poultry from avian influenza affected countries. The laboratory will be working closely with the Bureau of Standards under an MOU to assist agro-processors and farmers in meeting the requirements of export markets. The planned laboratories, Mr. Speaker, will be providing services that previously were not available in St. Lucia. Unfortunately, the initiation of such programs is presently hindered by the lack of trained laboratory personnel, although recommendations have already been submitted to public service. Mr. Speaker, I now move to a very, very, very important issue in the agricultural sector, is agricultural diversification. Mr. Speaker, in this financial year, a sum of $1.4 million was approved for what we call a cocoa sector enhancement project, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Dennery North, you have 15 minutes left.
Dennery South, Mr. Speaker.
Dennery South, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be done within time. Mr. Speaker, this cocoa project, and with the overall objective of increasing returns to the cocoa sector through the production of cocoa beans, building resilience to climate change, and advancing to higher levels of the value chain, Mr. Speaker, will provide greater levels of revenue to our farmers. We know, Mr. Speaker, a number of our farmers who have left the banana industry will have an opportunity to be able to get into the production of cocoa, Mr. Speaker. I know a lot of our farmers are struggling to remain in the banana industry, and we are making available for them, Mr. Speaker, an opportunity for them to benefit from the cocoa project, which will be implemented in this financial year. The Ministry of Agriculture in this final year will undertake the following activities, Mr. Speaker. Retrofitting of the BAF Propagation Center and propagation of cocoa plants, provision, and I see the honorable member for Soufrière from Jacques is taking notes. I know this will benefit the farmers in Soufrière tremendously, Mr. Speaker. Provision of labor for the pruning of cocoa plants, Mr. Speaker. We are seeing tremendous problems with the cocoa tree, Mr. Speaker, and a lot of our farmers are calling for pruning the trees because this would result in an increase in yield and production of cocoa pods. Training to enhance both the production and processing of cocoa. Rehabilitation of 123 acres of cocoa farm holdings. Expansion of approximately 294 acres and replanting of 78 acres. Je voulais crier sur toutes ces femmes à cette lycée, that le gouvernement Saint-Lucie, le ministre agricole, qui a fait un projet qui a encouragé à planter cacao en l'été. Et puis nous avons pour prendre l'opportunité ça là, pas quitter l'opportunité ça parce que nous avons plan, nous avons support, nous avons matériel besoin pour bailler sel. Nous savons le problème là venir pour disease là, Mr. Speaker. Nous savons qu'il y a disease, nous avons travaillé pour le ministre, mais nous voulons toutes ces femmes, as many farmers as possible, to take advantage of this project. Mr. Speaker, apiculture is another subsector that offers tremendous opportunities. Beekeeping in St. Lucia has a long and extensive history and has contributed to sustaining rural livelihoods and income generation, Mr. Speaker. In this financial year, Mr. Speaker, our apiculture farmers, Mr. Speaker, as well as our CMOS farmers will benefit from a free $100,000 that was approved in this new financial year to give support in terms of packaging, labeling, marketing, etc., Mr. Speaker. It's a thriving sector, and I want to see as many persons in the rural areas continue to benefit from the sector. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the fisheries, Mr. Speaker, we are making available 300 GPS satellite tracking devices free of charge to our fishermen, Mr. Speaker. The device will assist the fishers and marine units to monitor the activities of vessels at sea and assist with search and rescue activities. Mr. Speaker, je voulais crier sur ces pêcheurs pour faire savoir le gouvernement Saint-Lucie qui travaille pour bailler 300 GPS satellite tracking devices. Ça c'est un équipement pour qu'on placer en l'air qu'on tout. Si un niveau la mer, nous pouvons ça déterminer côté exactement côté où il est. Avec mon quoi, ça a un bon assistant pour vous. Parce que chaque ces pêcheurs nous en perdre en la mer et aussi si vous tenez une bonne manière pour communiquer avec marine unit là, avec fisheries department, nous devons sauver un chat la vie. So I hope that tout pêcheur qui n'y connaît, tout maître connaît, qui a une opportunité pour placer l'équipement ça là qu'on a yo, pour ça faire qu'on plus safe là au parti la mer. The government of that takes me to the Mikud floating jetty, Mr. Speaker. The government of Japan funded a floating jetty to the fishermen of Mikud at a cost of 2.9 million EC dollars, Mr. Speaker. And the whole aim was to improve the economic and social well-being of fisher folks in Miku. The jetty was prefabricated in Japan and was installed in February 2022, Mr. Speaker. A few weeks after installation, Mr. Speaker, the jetty began collapsing. As a result, for the safety of the fishermen and other stakeholders, the cabinet took a decision to dismantle the jetty, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let's imagine $2.9 million funded by the government of Japan, Mr. Speaker, to build a floating jetty for the fishermen. And within 3 weeks of installation, Mr. Speaker, it was not effective. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind this Honorable House, Mr. Speaker, that between 2011, Mr. Speaker, and 2016, Mr. Speaker, the St. Lucia Labour Party government built 2 wooden jetties, one in Prale, one in Savans Bay, Mr. Speaker, and it did not cost half of the amount, Mr. Speaker. But je voulais crier à ce pécheur pour dire que nous tous concernés à ce gouvernement, parce que le gouvernement ne va pas faire qualité bagaille ça, le gouvernement fait, mais nous avons travaillé ensemble, nous avons travaillé comme ministre pour garder ça nous ça fait. Et depuis nous avons une manière pour gagner l'argent pour ces pécheurs, nous avons fait ça nous payer pour nous faire pécheurs en support. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the forestry department, the place that I worked many years, Mr. Speaker, there is a state-of-the-art wildlife conservation and education center, Mr. Speaker, as its name suggests. It was conceptualized with the overall aim of promoting the conservation of St. Lucia's indigenous and endemic wild fauna and flora, Mr. Speaker, as well as educating the general public on the value and importance. Mr. Speaker, we are hoping that this center will be fully operational sometime in September and will bring some much needed revenue for the government and people of St. Lucia. Water resources, Mr. Speaker, the Water Resources Management Agency, Mr. Speaker. The Water Resources Management Agency has the mandate of managing and protecting the water resources of the country, Mr. Speaker. Water issues cut across all sectors such as health and sanitation, industry, agriculture, recreation, and the environment. Mr. Speaker, in 2022-2023, the WRMA will continue to implement and complete outstanding projects which include the hydrometeorological data and information dissemination portal, the Resilient Environment and Caribbean Habitats REACH project, the new water policy, the EU GCCA water resiliency project, rainwater harvesting system in the Plainview Combined School, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to say to my constituency, Mr. Speaker, that I am very happy to stand in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, and to thank them once again for the support they've given me. Mr. Speaker, in the constituency of Dennery South, we are going to revamp the Dennery South Saturday Night Fish Fiesta. This will provide the much-needed social activity required in the constituency, Mr. Speaker, to stimulate some form of economic benefit to our fishers, farmers, and vendors. Mr. Speaker, the infusion of life into the Saturday Night Fish Fiesta, Mr. Speaker, will also signal the gradual uplift of the beachfront area from the Twalo River to the old police station in Phase 1 and the remaining areas up to the river mouth in Phase 2. Mr. Speaker, we are seeking to position the Dennery South so that this constituency can benefit from the tourism industry. Mr. Speaker, in the community of Lakai Lume, we are going to create a new social and economic space with a view of having a major community activity on Sundays, Mr. Speaker. Country and Western music has a rich history in the community, so we plan to exploit this unique history and create a commercial opportunity in Lakai and Lime. Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to thank the people in my ministry, Mr. Speaker, my PS, my deputy PS, my DAS, my DDAS, Mr. Speaker, heads of units and divisions, Mr. Speaker, my cabinet colleagues, Mr. Speaker, the Dennery South Constituency Council, all other subcommittees established in Dennery South to make that change that Dennery South truly deserves, Mr. Speaker, and to make Dennery South the envy of all constituencies in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. In closing, Mr. Speaker, I want to endorse the Appropriations Bill 2022-2023. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.